ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew Dicecco. Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
You know, we recognize the ability of the roster that's put together right now. And I think we have the ability to do something really special with this group, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Andrew Dicecco is back. This team has a lot of warts. The defensive coordinator, who we didn't get a lot into yesterday because the quarterback and the coach were so bad that we kind of let the defensive coordinator off the hook a bit. He was grilled a little bit today, and I thought he was a little forthcoming. Yeah, we were embarrassing. He says, I don't blame individuals, but yeah, we were embarrassing. And, Andrew, let's start with just the defense as a whole. What kind of defense do the Eagles have? Good defense, great defense, average defense, bad defense?
It's an average defense that their play tends to fluctuate depending on who they're playing. And they get good play from the defensive line, and then the back end doesn't play well. And the second level rarely plays well. And you know, they don't seem to put a complete game together. I think Jim Schwartz has done an okay job given the pieces that he has to work with. But, I mean, Jim Schwartz, you heard him today. I mean, he'll be the first one to tell you that there are certain things that are embarrassing, like the Giants running the same play, the same formation that they did in the first game. And, you know, they fit it wrong. And guys weren't getting off blocks, like he said. You know, there's certain things that leaves you scratching your head because they make the same mistakes over and over again. So I think there's something to be said for that.
So, you know, he mentions that, you know, hey, it's embarrassing in this game because they ran the same formation. You mentioned, he said, we fit it wrong. Do we put that on the coach? Do we put that on the players? Like, in other words, does the players not see that formation when they're out on the field and recognize it? Or is that the coach not calling the right defense? I mean, you're not going to call the defense for that formation because you don't see what they're calling. So is that up to the players to see that formation and kind of make the adjustment?
Yeah, to me, that's pretty cut and dry. It has to be on the defense. It's the same formation that beat them in the first game. You have to know, looking at film, that this is what they're running, and you have to be able to fit that. I think that has to do with the limited personnel that he has and the lack of instincts that you're getting from a lot of the players that are out there. They're slow to react. A lot of times they over-pursue. They're not a very fundamentally sound defense. They're not very disciplined. And that is kind of, you know, you kind of saw that culminated in some of those big plays.
I also, you know, Wayne Gallman and the Giants, they ran the ball pretty well against this team. Now, the Eagles have kind of their calling card the last couple of years, that front four. They've been very good against the run in the past. Like, you never really think of this team as a team that struggles against the run. But are we starting to see a team in that front four that is having some problems against the run? Why were the Giants able to run the ball so effectively, especially in the first half of the game?
You know, when you look at the numbers, though, Wayne Gallman only had 18 carries for 53 yards. That's 2.9 yards a carry, and Alfred Morris only had 4.3 yards a carry. The damage was really done by Daniel Jones, who had 64 yards on 9 carries, including that 34-yarder that was a backbreaker early on. I really do think that it's magnified some of the key runs that Wayne Gallman was able to convert, and I think some of those things make it a lot worse than what it actually is. I do think that the Eagles' run defense is a little bit better than what many suggest when you look at the box score, and I do think that that's going to be pivotal coming into this week, where the Cleveland Browns, their offense is predicated on the ground game, and they have two very, very good running backs in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, of course, who each had 19 carries apiece and over 100 yards last week. So that's going to be, they don't have a lot of burners, so they're going to have to rely on that run defense if they want to win this game.
I know we brought this player up once in a while throughout the weeks, but now we're at week 10, and Hargrave has been even more underwhelming than he was 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. So, you know, what is he? Who is he? Who is Hargrave?
That's a great question, because in my scouting report last week going into Sunday's game, I thought that he had to dominate that game. You're going against a replacement level starter and center Nick Gates for the Giants, and a rookie guard in Shane Lemieux and Kevin Zeitler, who's a decent veteran, but there's opportunities there to push the pocket, get Daniel Jones off of his spot. And I didn't think that in the stat sheet, it didn't look like he had that good of a game, but I do think that the defensive line did some nice things because they kept the blockers, for the most part, off of the linebackers. The linebackers were able to rack up the tackles. Of course, that's kind of overshadowed by the plays where they couldn't get off blocks that led to those big plays. But I thought that, Edwards and Singleton were able to clean up, and I thought the defensive line did a nice job to kind of hold off some of those blockers. So they did end up with 3 sacks, so there's that. But I really do – they got 3 sacks in the first matchup against the Giants as well, but I really do think that there was more opportunity there. I expected more from Derek Barnett and Josh Sweat to really take advantage of Andrew Thomas, who really hadn't been – he's kind of been struggling, but he's starting to find his footing a little bit. But I thought that there was opportunity there to really take advantage of that porous offensive line.
Andrew Dicecco, Football at 4. So I thought a big part in the game, they have the 2 series that start the game where they give up touchdowns. I think it's the first time they've given up back-to-back touchdowns in a while. I mean, I don't remember them coming out being down, giving up 14 like that. And then they kind of felt like they settled back in. Boston Scott scores the touchdown. It's 14-11. And then you had the 27-yarder to Shepard. You hit Tate for 38. Are we starting to see teams pick on Maddox and Roby Coleman a little bit more here? Because it felt like they could really – the defense kind of settled in, and then it was like, all right, let's find the 2 guys on the field. And we talked about this. The Eagles aren't game planning to go after the weakness of the Giant defense or anybody else's defense for that matter. But the Giants seem like, okay, they're getting back into this game. Let's go after their weak guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear looking at the defense. If the pass rush doesn't get home, you're going to have time to throw. And if you're going to throw, you're going to go after the 5'9" Avonte Maddox on the outside. You're going to go after Nickel Roby Coleman, who goes 5'7", but he known for his instincts. He has been very slow to close on the football this season and kind of looks lost a little bit out there. He's been very inconsistent. I expected a lot more from him when I thought he was a value signing when they brought him in, but that's where you're going to attack. And Avonte Maddox, we talked about this yesterday. He's not an outside corner. He's going to be a nickel corner next season, but that's where teams are going. And I know that someone asked a question today about, having smaller corners, is that, affect them in jump ball situations. He kind of dismissed that, saying that they have good leaping ability and things like that. I mean, Avonte Maddox struggles against bigger receivers. Going against Devontae Adams last season told you that. And there's countless other examples. He's a very good match and mirror corner. He's quick twitch guy, but he's going to continue to struggle against these bigger receivers, which is going to be pivotal coming down the stretch here.
Is there anyone that you'd rather try over Maddox, or is he the best option they really have at this point? I know it's very limited, to be fair.
Yeah, it's very limited. There's not many other options you can go to outside of do you put Jalen Mills out there, and maybe you go with Will Parks full time at safety, and you go Parks and McLeod there, and let Jalen Mills kind of do his thing. But I don't know that it's quite gotten to that part yet. I don't know how much better Jalen Mills is going to be than Avonte Maddox. Avonte Maddox has the quickness and the instincts, but Jalen Mills has the toughness and the length, but doesn't have the instinct. So it's really kind of a pick your poison there. I think that they're probably best served leaving it the way that it is, but it's going to continue to be a problem all season.
Was it weird to see such limited snaps for Will Parks?
Yeah, I'm kind of befuddled about how they decided to use Will Parks, because he was touted as one of the biggest value signings of this free agent class, and they had all these big plans for him, and they're going to use him as a versatile Swiss Army knife and nickel and corner, and they're going to use him as a hybrid linebacker and all these different things, match him up over these hybrid tight ends. The one time where you got to see him against a tight end when he was isolated, he nearly gave up the game-winning touchdown to Evan Ingram had he not dropped that. It's kind of puzzling how they're using him. I think, obviously, losing that valuable time due to injury certainly didn't help. It's kind of hard to jump right in and get integrated into the defense this late in the season. But, I mean, there has to be a role for someone like Will Parks. And you have to find a way to use them. I mean, they're very limited on the back end. 6
snaps for Will Parks. I'm surprised. That's 8% of the plays he was on the field.
that was one of the biggest shockers to me when I looked at the snap count.
Yeah, it's almost.
I don't get that at all.
Yeah, and Mills is playing, the safety 69 plays, so he's out there all but 2 plays. I think Singleton and McLeod play all 71, and then Mills was at 69, Slay 69, Maddox 64, Parks at 6. I mean, if I'm looking for one thing to try to change up, like I agree, I think we talked about this yesterday. Doug Peterson said, I don't know where there's too many spots on the field where I can make changes. That seems like one at least, where I can get a veteran Parks on the field and a veteran Mills, and hopefully he gives me a better, competes a little better on the outside. Than it's not even that Maddox doesn't compete. It's just I don't think he's good enough to be an outside guy.
Yeah, he's not good enough to be an outside guy. He doesn't have that length. I do think that moving forward, if you talk about these personnel changes, that's one of the few changes that you can actually make is get Will Parks involved. He has length. He has versatility. You liked him enough to bring to identify him as being a player you wanted to bring in here. We'll give him a long look and see if there's something there. If there's not something there, then he walks in the off season. But at this point, you have to turn over every stone. You're running out of time, frankly, and he's a player that has some ability. So why not throw him out there and see what you have?
Yeah, that's one that we didn't think of yesterday, but it's a good one today. Is that he only played 6 snaps in the game? You brought him in; he's on a 1-year deal. Why not take a look at him and see what he does? And you know that Mills, why he's not a Pro Bowler, he definitely gives you, some pretty decent play at corner. And it's obvious that other corner opposite Slay is something that's a little bit of a problem for this team. Although I'm sure people out there saying, well, it's still not fixing this team. But for the most part, the defense, the team has been good, not great. But I thought they really had a tough day against this Giant team, and I guess it's a bad thing for things to come with this 5-game stretch coming up. They got some teams here. Cleveland not as much in the passing game, but they're seeing some offenses here. Green Bay, Seattle, New Orleans, Arizona, where, man, they could really get exposed coming up.
Yeah, there's going to be a big problem here, Mike, if they don't find a way to mask some of the deficiency out there on the boundary. If you look back into the summer, if you go back to the archives and listen to the Inside the Birds podcast, Adam and Jeff have talked about, have kind of outlined that was a position of need months before, and I've written about it as well. They just did not have the depth. Darius Slay kind of masks a lot of the issues that they have there, but they're going to continue to pick on the other side, and they're not well equipped. I know, obviously, Maddox seems to be a bridge player to get them to next season, where hopefully you're fortunate to get another corner to complement Darius Slay. But it's very evident that he's not an outside corner. And like you said, these teams that we have coming down the stretch here, well, they like to throw the football a little bit. Just outside of the Cleveland Browns, they're gonna target Maddox, and they're gonna continue to work the slot. Jarvis Landry's a player to watch this week going against Nicole Roby-Coleman. These are going to continue to be problem areas if they don't figure out a way. And like I said, they're running out of time here, and Jim Schwartz needs to find a way to get the most out of his players.
Yeah, and I know, up front, the front four, that's the kind of the bread and butter. The linebackers are what they are. If they can, that secondary, you got Slay, who I think's done a really good job. McLeod, I think this is probably the best year McLeod has had with the team. Maybe he's played well in the past, but just got overshadowed by what Jenkins did. If they can get a better play out of that corner, maybe that helps them out there. But another area, and Dave Phipps spoke today, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Greg Ward and Jalen Reagor on those punts. Ward is just back there to catch the ball ultimately, but the punt return is turning into a problem because they are just essentially catching the ball, and now they're having problems figuring out when to catch it and when not to catch it.
Yeah, and you and I have kind of talked about this at least a few weeks ago that, yeah, they like putting Greg Ward back there because he's that sure-handed guy. He lacks the explosive burst. He's not a threat to really give you anything more than 5 yards, if that. He's mostly going to fare to but he's back there for his stability. Deshaun Jackson was the guy that they put back there. Obviously, when he got hurt, they were hoping for a big play there. That's why they put him back. Jalen Reagor, he should have fielded that ball. That was an egregious error, and Dave Phipps admitted as much today in his press conference. One interesting name, Mike, that I think I'm not saying that they have any interest, but I thought that it was kind of interesting, given his special teams background and his background with the Eagles, was DeAndre Carter was released from the Houston Texans yesterday. I don't necessarily know if there's room for him, but Quez Watkins hasn't gotten was inactive last week. I don't know, where they kind of slot him. I don't know if there's another move that they could potentially make. But I mean, if you're looking to bolster the return game or at least give you some juice, I mean, he's a guy that's out there.
They definitely need to do something because it's crushing, especially with your offense struggling this much, to be starting at your 3-yard line, your 5-yard line, because you're not actually catching the punts. It's putting you in a miserable spot to begin with. But when Gil mentioned the defensive line, I wanted to get your thoughts on how you would grade Fletcher Cox to this point.
Well, it seems to me that Fletcher he's been up and down. But if you think about it, the last couple of seasons, you've kind of seen his play taper off at the end of the season. And that's for various reasons, because he's been having to play a ton of snaps. He hasn't gotten a competent, player to play opposite of him. So he's kind of had to be that guy that needs to be always out there. He's doing some nice things against the run, but you're not seeing the pressures. And it's just been his play has been very turbulent to answer that question, Hunter. If I had to grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, I might give him a 7 probably, but he has, that's coming from a player who has 10 ability, and we've seen that. They haven't gotten the play that I thought that they were going to get from Hargrave or Cox going into the season. Malik Jackson has been their best defensive tackle.
Yeah, I think the point about Hargrave you brought up, he's been extremely disappointing for what you thought you were getting. And for what he did for Pittsburgh last year, he was a big reason, we thought anyway, because they're still sacking the quarterback out there, at why they were getting so many sacks is because Hargrave got such up-the-middle penetration and took on so many blockers that it was allowing guys to go one-on-one, and the Eagles are not getting that from him. And you thought, oh, my Lord, with him and Fletcher, you're going to have all sorts of problems in the middle, and I feel like they're not as disruptive up the middle as they should be. And, this front four has a lot of money. I feel like if that front four is a bigger factor in that game, their defense is a bigger factor in the game. I mean, you hate to say, well, they were terrible, because I don't think they were terrible, but I feel like they could have been more disruptive.
Yeah, no, they definitely weren't terrible. Like I said, they did some nice things to kind of occupy blockers and create, and so to free up some of the linebackers to make those tackles. But like we talked about, there was opportunity. The Giants' interior was the area to attack. They had Nick Gase there. You have Shane Lemieux, who was a day 3 rookie. I believe he got nicked up, and Will Hernandez came in later. And then you have Kevin Zeitler. That's where the pressure should be coming from. And with all the money invested into the defensive tackle position, to see that kind of come up empty for the second time against the Giants, where that was an area to strike, it was kind of disappointing. I mean, like I said, they've had their moments, but it hasn't been nearly as consistent enough.
We're talking with Andrew Dicecco, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. And obviously, they're getting ready for the Cleveland Browns this week. And, it feels like this is kind of a defining week for this team. I mean, you lose again, you're 3-6-1. And by the way, even if they do lose this week, they will most likely be in first place at the end of the week. The Giants do not play, right? They have a bye, I think, this week, right. Which means they can't surpass 3 wins. So no one will pass you in the win column. So a loss this week. But if it starts to get to that point where you're losing again, let me ask you if you feel that any of the particulars, the Petersons, the Schwartz, the Roseman, and the Wentz, are any of those guys on the hot seat?
Man, I mean, if they lose this week, you're talking
not that
about
you would do something
winning
in season, but I'm just saying that they would be put on the owner's radar that you are now on notice.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose this week and things start to look bleak, looking at that slate of games that's coming up, I mean, I think it's fair to say that Doug might be on the hot seat. I don't know that anybody else would. I'm still not 100% sure that Doug would be on the hot seat, but I think that there would have to be some sort of change, probably in personnel throughout the offseason. But I think there would have to be something substantial there. There would have to be, you have to see like no inspired play, a complete regression from everyone. Like he would have to have clearly lost the locker room, and there would have to be signs like that would have to inspire that kind of change.
Now, real quick, they did make a move today. Michael Jacquet to the practice squad, from the practice squad to the active roster. He played in a couple of games. Adrian Killens on the practice squad. I guess Jacquet more than anything. Do they see something in him to activate him to say, hey, someone's on notice?
I don't necessarily think that it has to do with that. I think that they really just need the depth at corner, and they like what they've seen from him. He's their biggest corner. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. He has some versatility. I believe he played wide receiver and corner at Louisiana Lafayette. I think that he has a pro ready. He has a pro build, and I think that he has decent ball skills and enough potential and I think he showed enough in his limited opportunities to not necessarily feel comfortable sending him back to the practice squad and chancing that. I think that he does have some tools that are worth developing. He's still a project, don't get me wrong, but I think that the Eagles like what they have there.
If things do continue to go south, can you see a scenario where they pull the plug on the play calling on Doug Peterson?
Yeah, not this week, but I could definitely see that on the horizon. And I mean, Doug was pretty much asked that yesterday, and it didn't seem like he had any intention of doing that anytime soon. If he had anything to do with it, of course. But
he was almost insulted that they asked.
Yeah, he was, and you saw the sarcasm come out when a question was asked regarding that. But it would have to be something drastic, I think, for him to be like, okay, let's try whomever. Let's try Rich Scangarello. Let's try Morning Wake, who's called plays before. Rich Scangarello called plays before. Let's try something like that. But I think it would have to be a complete disaster, and the offense is yielding nothing. And that's kind of like a last attempt at trying to salvage something.
How much? They had the firings this offseason. Doug said they're not going to be fired. Then they got fired. He's given Scangarella, Morning Wig. The lack of continuity that maybe Doug, that there's more than meets the eye, that there could be some friction between Doug and the front office.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, that was one example of it, and it's a pretty big example, but I don't tend to read too much into that until I kind of tend to let things play out and see where that goes. But they can quiet all that talk by righting the ship and getting and playing to the level that they're capable of doing, and that will kind of quiet all that talk. But we'll kind of have to see how that all plays out.
All right, you got any guys tonight you're interested in tonight, tomorrow? A little action?
Oh, of course, man. I like the left tackle from Buffalo, Coyote Awashika. He's not a household name yet, but he's going to be a riser come during the pre-draft process. From Ball State, the next couple days there they play. I like running back Caleb Huntley, cornerback Antonio Phillips. Central Michigan plays running back Kobe Lewis, wide receiver Khalil Pimpleton, linebacker Troy Brown, and DT Roby Stewart, guys that I like. Looking at Tulsa, the 25th ranked Tulsa, of course, wide receiver Keelan Stokes, linebacker Zaven Collins. That's a name that Eagles fans should write down. He's 6'4", 260. He would probably be best served playing in a 3-4, but I think that he has the athleticism and the movement skills to play he offers scheme versatility. He has 34 tackles, 4 sacks, 3 picks, and 2 forced fumbles. In my opinion, he's one of the most underrated defensive players in the nation. He's a guy to watch. And then with Wyoming, I'm a big fan of junior running back Xavier Valladay. He has nearly 400 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Those are just some names to watch.
All right, action tonight, tomorrow, Thursday night, couple games. Friday, you got a nice slate of games as well. Purdue, Minnesota, Louisville, Syracuse. Those 2 teams are terrible, but should be a lot of high scoring there. The Air Force Academy, so keep an eye on that. And, of course, Andrew Dicecco, Dicecco NFL. For more on the Eagles and college football, the draft, and all that good stuff here on Football at 4. All right, man. Thanks, pal.
Take care, guys.
He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And Football at 4 is brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now to match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com. Win real money with the sports book and casino games from the comfort of your home. 21 or older, gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER.